Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, and Monday is the day I remind you that this ministry is made possible or is made expansive by your support, which you have been wonderful in offering. So you can go to the Patreon website, which is this marvelous website for where creative people with projects we're supporting. You can review all the projects, including Mission of the Masters. And if you wish, you can subscribe. It has certain perks. You get access to the paid classes that I do for Ananda Palo Alto, which is a very specific subset. You get those for free, and you also get a couple of special videos every month from me. Or you can support through Mission of the Masters through PayPal. Rather than my personal name, look up Mission of the Masters on PayPal. If you wish to do it that way, or go to my website, Asha Joy. It gives you lots of choices. And the result of all of that, all you wonderful people and your enthusiasm, is that we get to keep doing this. And we keep doing it dynamically and as effectively as we can, because we can have the right techies, we can have the right equipment, we can have the right opportunities. I've started recording some of Swami's books as audio books, and we're supporting a few other people to also make audio books out of Swami's books, that's a long project down the road because they all have to be edited. Spanish translation, Italian translation of Lightbearer, a much improved index for Lightbearer is now underway, and that's all 100% because of your enthusiasm. And also we're inching our way toward 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, but we just can't quite seem to get there. So if you'd like to subscribe, just for the fun of watching that silly dial move over, I would be very grateful to you. So now, let's pray together and begin. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Master Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, dear friend Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow to you all. Give us the strength and clarity and open-hearted joy to be able to receive your presence in all that we do. Guide us that we may live in this world not from our whims and fancies, but from divine inspiration, living always in harmony with our own superconscious self. We are your children. Guide us and bless us. Om. Peace. Amen. Okay. We are working with the Art of Supportive Leadership, calling it How to Work with People. We have just transitioned into the chapter 8, which is called The Importance of Flexibility. And so here we are on this one. I'm going to read from the beginning, even though I discussed the first paragraph. It is not weakness in a leader to admit error, nor is it weakness to agree to other ideas than his own. The wise man knows that the fear of being thought fallible is itself a proof of fallibility. That's a very interesting lesson that I had to learn in sort of a hard way. I was working for Swami Kriyananda, supposedly running the publications business, and for various complicated reasons I was terrible at it. And he kept trying to help me. And I kept thinking that I had to act like I had my act together. And I would say yes, but I never understood what he was wanting, and I never asked him to help me explain. I've never asked him to explain to me, to show me what I was needed. I mean, I had a golden opportunity to learn from him, but I thought to be competent meant that you always had to have it together. And just, exactly what Swami says. The fear of being thought fallible is in itself proof of fallibility. And I just wouldn't ask. I wouldn't take his training. When I think about it now, I never actually really thought about it until literally just this minute, that he was trying to train me, and I refused to let him, because I thought that I had to show that I already knew. It's just completely confused. And I lived with that. What Swami did is he kept shifting my job. He shifted my job for a long time. Finally put me into, well, not even really. He just kept shifting my job over and over again, looking for a way that I could succeed. Finally, I came into close association with a couple of really competent people. The first thing I noticed was that they were always asking people to help them. And they were perfectly comfortable with the fact that they didn't know. Why I hadn't noticed that before, I don't know, but I didn't. Oh, that's what a competent person looks like. They're completely relaxed. They don't have anything to prove. And so when they need help, they ask for it. When they need training, they accept it. When they need correction, they're glad of it. Whereas I was trying to cloak myself rather than actually learn to be better. It was an incredible shift. Human nature, after all, is fallible. Swami says it so casually. And remember also, truth always wins out in the end, which is an aphorism I think we've mentioned quite a few times, and it's worth repeating, because every time we find ourselves in some kind of a defensive position, whether it's in a position of leadership or in a personal relationship or in any circumstance, whenever you're trying to defend yourself so you won't be found out for being fallible, you're already doomed, because truth always wins. You might be able to project enough energy to get an untruth, to have a little traction on that untruth. You might even get a whole lifetime or two out of it. But in the end, what is has more power than our attempts to make it not true. And I'm not talking about creative transformation. You know, you can creatively transform a situation with dynamic, inspired energy. And you don't have to, when you say truth always wins, it doesn't mean that the lowest common denominator always pulls things down. But it means that there is an inherent facts about life or people, like human nature is fallible, or to put up an aura of infallibility is the biggest proof of fallibility. These are just facts. And if you think about your own life, when somebody, the phrase we use now is shines you on, pretends that everything's okay, tells you that they don't really feel the way you know full well they feel, you always know it. You always know it. It's just like that mess with Swami that I was describing. I mean, he wanted to train me, which would have been useful, would have saved me about 20 years of struggle, but I also just got into such a complicated relationship with Swami because he knew precisely what I was and wasn't doing. It wasn't hard for him to see. And plus, he knew what I was doing internally, psychologically and emotionally. And because of that, this very complicated confusion developed between us. And it ended with Swami saying to me, first of all, he began, as he put it, to get a little worried about me because it was getting such a mess. And he said, you tried to just sort of have everything together. He didn't use those words. The exact words escaped me because he didn't use colloquialisms that much. But he said, you never fooled me. That were his words. And my response to that was, well, what a colossal waste of time on my part. Just putting up this facade that never fooled you. Now you could say, oh, Swami was so intuitive and insightful, but think about it. When anybody in your world, whether it's your child or your spouse or your friend, puts on a show because they don't want to admit what's really happening, are you really fooled? Almost no one is fooled. You can just tell immediately. But if they won't let you in, you can't crack it. So you all just have to live with this untruth, which makes a terrible mess because truth always wins in the end. So let's just skip to the end. Okay, so what's really true? Am I really not good at this? When Swami actually finally took me out of that position, for which I was simply not qualified and refused to learn, he told me on a Friday that he was going to make some job switches, and he was going to put someone else into that position who was more naturally competent in it. He was going to move me over into something I thought I could do better. And I was so relieved to be taken out of that job. But I knew also that I had failed rather miserably. And it was a Friday, and I said to Swamiji, I know you have a lot of correctives that you want to offer to me, and I do want to hear them. But why don't you tell me on Monday? So for the weekend, I can just enjoy the fact that I don't have to do this anymore. And he agreed, and we had a very happy weekend. And then on Monday, he kindly, but pretty completely explained to me all the ways in which I had made a mess of it. No, he explained to me a few of the ways in which I had made a mess of it. And it put me into such a depression, it took me at least a month to get out of it. Because it had to be faced. And all the confusion and fear I had just made it worse. Truth always wins in the end. I've become since then much more eager to get to the truth. When I hear that tone of voice, when I feel that tension in my body, that's causing me to want things to be other than they are. Of course, I'm not always able to catch it right in the moment, but God knows I try, because truth will win in the end. So, now he says, perfection in human terms is not a thing, nor is it a fixed condition. It is a direction from the less perfect forever toward that which is more perfect. I want to read this again because this is critical. Perfection in human terms is not a thing, nor is it a fixed condition. It is a direction from the less perfect forever toward that which is more perfect. Now, this is also something I began to learn from competent people. I thought that every little tiny piece of what you did, you had to slave over every paragraph, every sentence, every color swatch, until it was absolutely perfect before then you'd made this tiny move on to the next one. And as a consequence, I never got anything done. And again, I observed that competent people just made it good enough. And I'm not saying that they were sloppy. It's just that they recognized that perfection is a direction. It's not a fixed thing. It's not having this, little piece of promotion, this little decision, this part of the office, this, whatever it might be. It's not getting each one of those lined up just so. It's creating a flow of energy that's going to where you're going. And that obsessive preoccupation with fixing, with defining perfection as a thing, as a fixed condition, rather than perfection is to keep the energy going. And this is also important when you're working with a team, where it may be that not everyone on your team is equally talented. And maybe some of the people on your team are not as talented perhaps as you are in the areas of their responsibility. But if you don't accept the best that they do or what they think is the best, then either you have to do everything yourself or the project or the project comes to a complete halt. So you have to realize it's a direction. The way and Swami would exhibit this also in the expression of his own personal work. I put it into this aphorism. Swami would do a good thing now and a better thing later. And that would be true even with books he would publish or slideshow he would make or something. It's like there's a certain amount of time, it has to be done. There's a certain amount of inspiration in the moment. There are other priorities on my time. If I spend all my time perfecting just this one exactly so, and often in his books, especially, he would write the book, publish it, maybe a few years later he'd go back. And it wasn't even that what he did wasn't satisfactory to him. It's just, it was really good for the moment. Then time passed, maybe he had more leisure, maybe other ideas had come to him, maybe circumstances just changed a little bit, and then he would polish it. And sometimes he would say, I just didn't have the time to do it then, or, that was other things have happened since that have made me consider this. And he was comfortable with that. He was always comfortable with that. Sometimes he did it when he wrote Art is a Hidden Message. I think that's what the final title of that book was. I believe he published 3 editions in 1 year, if I'm not mistaken. I think it may be that Hope for a Better World he also rewrote. He published it. Then he thought about it, and he went back and he made it better. But it was partly publishing it, getting it into book form. He said sometimes when he would get a book into book form, and then he would read it as a book, he would see editing changes that just were not visible to him when it was a manuscript. So he would just, a good thing now and a better thing later. It's a flow of energy is what you have to call it. Please don't misunderstand. It's not low energy. But it's realizing that reality always wins. If your team, for example, has presented to you a brochure or a launch idea or an event, and maybe in your mind you think, oh, well, we could do it this, we could do that instead, maybe this would be better, but this is good enough because it gets the energy moving, it gets their flow moving. Also, it's just like life itself is not a fixed entity. Anything that you can fix in perfection, if it's not changing, it's dead. That's really an important reality to remember. So even in ourselves, Swami made the wonderful comment. He said, if you're going to judge yourself, and then he said parenthetically, which I do not recommend, he said you have to see yourself not as any fixed accomplishment. And this was so interesting. By the time you can say, this is what I am, this is what I've done, by definition, it's already behind you. Because you're reflecting on the past at that point. I wrote this book, I achieved this thing, I got this painting exactly as I wanted it. If you can name it as a fixed condition, it's already behind you. It's very interesting to contemplate that. It's already behind you. And what you are is what you have become from that experience and where you're taking that energy. So he said, never consider yourself as a fixed reality. What you are is a flow of energy. And so who you are is the direction of that energy. And as he put it, you are what you aspire to become. And so what you aspire to become is much more your definition than any fixed thing that you can see behind you. And if you're living with the right spirit of Nishkam Karma, you're interested in the things that are behind you, but they aren't you. I find that in the books I've published, especially Light Bearer, which is the most important one to me, it was my life's work, really. As soon as I finished that book, I felt, as soon as that book was published, I hope to do more in my incarnation, but I could stop now and be content because it was the assignment that was given to me by Swamiji when I was 24. So, but the book itself, I've never raised children, but the book itself feels to me like a mother must feel about her grown child. Your child has gone off, he's gone to medical school, he's gotten a fellowship, he has all this special training, maybe lives in another country, he's doing great work in that country, and he may still be your child, and you may remember sort of helping him through all these stages, but he has his own life now, whatever he's doing. I mean, this is hypothetical to me because in this incarnation, I haven't done it, but I know what it would feel like. But that book wanders around doing its own job right now. And people will write to me and tell me that they like it, and I'm just so happy that they like it. But the experience that somebody else is having with that book does not include me. It's just like the book itself, which in this case is Swamiji, is communicating to them, and they're having their own relationship. And I'm awfully glad they're having it, but it doesn't have anything to do with me because I did it. It's behind me. But the flow of energy that writing that book created for me is the reality I work with now. The relaxation of having written it, the comfort of having known I did my best. It completely changed my energy field. And that energy field is now what I'm moving in, but it's not the thing itself. So this is perhaps, well, I want to say one of the most important points on leadership, but it is, because otherwise leaders just obsess over the details. And Swami talks about this in a little bit in this chapter and in the one that comes. It's a grave mistake for the leader to think, well, I've just got to get it all just perfect before I start. But then you're trying to make perfection a fixed thing. And if you're doing that, by the time you launch it, it's already dead. Because it has to have a living heartbeat, vitality, shifting, new experiences, changed by new experiences. Perfection is in the moment. It's not in something that just sits there. So, let's go forward. And also, you have to deal with the fact that we are not perfect. That's what I was wanting to say also. You know, perfection in a human being is to be a God-realized master. And if you're a God-realized master, you're not listening to this class. And you're probably not doing the projects either. It's just not what we are. So we are always finding a higher level that we can work from. And if we ourselves fix the details of what we're doing, then we condemn ourselves to that limited reality. That's why Swami says it's a direction. And also, let me just go the other part of that I didn't say clearly enough, is if a person is doing the best they can, facing in the right direction, just putting forth whatever energy they have to make the meal good, the greeting of the guests, the event, the painting, the book, if it's the best they can do, then that's right for them. Perfection is a direction. This is my best work. And the effort of creating it will change me. And 10 years from now, my best work will be better. But if I didn't confidently put forth the best I can do now, I will never have that 10 years that's better. And if the leader represses people and doesn't allow them to do their best, recognizing that we're all on a journey together, then your team never grows. Your team becomes moribund, and nothing works. Swami was a master at perfection being directional. He had the desire to have Ananda community village, Ananda village built. He had traveled and lived in Europe. Almost none of us had. We were pretty purely an American group, and as a group, for the most part, we hadn't traveled very much. There were a few exceptions, but most of us hadn't. Swami, by contrast, was born in Europe and had been traveling since he was literally 6 months old. That was the first time he crossed the Atlantic with his parents, of course, on a ship from Romania, where he was born, to America, where his parents were from. And he was a citizen, being their child. And he had this image that we're going to build a village and it's going to look like a village. And he had pictures of European villages that he'd seen, Eastern European villages, you know, just English villages, places where the architecture was similar, where things were designed as a unit. And when you just looked at it, it had a charming harmony. And he had that picture for Ananda Village. That ran smack into the American ideal that my home is my castle, and the sort of independent spirit of the young people who are coming, which is with my own hands, I'm going to design and build my own little house according to my own ideas. And Swami tried hard, and none of us had any idea what he had. We didn't have the vision in our mind. Later, when I went to Europe and went to other countries, and I saw exactly what he was saying, I said, oh, that would have been much nicer for us. Then people would have come in and seen something that had a unified reality. It's not that what's there is bad. By no means is it bad, but he had this idea that he just couldn't get across. And much later, he sort of shrugged and he says, well, what we can do now is plant a lot of trees. It's just like, it was just lost. It just couldn't be done. And a whole energy got going that's never really been reversed. As I say, it's harmonious, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm I don't want to criticize people who have worked extremely hard. I'm really just talking about how Swami related to it. You would think it would have been vitally important, but it wasn't more important than just keeping the energy flowing. And we can always plant trees and just create so that the architecture is less important and the landscape is more important. And it works. And above all, the spirit was wonderful. Swamiji did not want to hurt the spirit and to fight too hard for an idea that no one else understood. He realized would not bring anybody to where he wanted us to go. Perfection is a direction. The direction that he was most concerned with was the positive energy of the people who were there. He had this other idea. We couldn't comprehend it. We had even had philosophical objections to it. He just gave up and worked with our flow of energy because we were going in the right direction, and it was just a detail. What difference did it make? So he says a good leader will avoid holding fixed ideas. He will realize that living situations, unlike buildings and bridges, are always fluid. And that was what I was saying before. The only thing that doesn't change is something that has no life force. And a building doesn't have life force. A bridge doesn't have life force in and of itself. It's animated by human beings who make it as best they can, but then it becomes a fixed entity. But he says he will realize that living situations, he doesn't even say living people, although the people are what make it fluid. Living situations are always fluid because this person has this idea today, someone has a different idea tomorrow, the marketplace changes, the taste of the public changes, somebody resigns from the team, somebody new comes into the team, there's a financial windfall, there's a financial loss, the weather changes, the politics change, the government changes. Everything is always fluid. That is the nature of life. And the human mind becomes insecure in all that fluidity and wants to just make it a certain way. And we have to realize perfection is directional. So a good leader will avoid having fixed ideas. You can have fixed ideals, but how you reach those ideals needs to be very, very fluid. So we have come to an idea, and those ideas should be as broad as possible. We are here to serve humanity. I started this by talking about the mission of the masters, which is the work that I am privileged to be able to do. I try to work on behalf of what the masters want from me. So I don't re-examine that premise. I'm a disciple of this path through Swamiji. I endeavor to live in harmony with everything that Swami taught me. But that understanding of what that is not fixed, because I'm not fixed. I can understand today something I didn't understand yesterday. Just now, I realized that Swami wanted to train me in something that it would have served me to learn much earlier in my life. And I just couldn't accept it. And as a consequence, various other things happened because my ideas were too fixed. And I wasn't able to just open up to what he really wanted to tell me. So, in other words, I learned something today that I didn't know before. So I'm a different person now. And that should be the condition for all of us at all times. God bless you, my friends.